welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on, a truly unique deep dive. It's into a fascinating, maybe even a bit unsettling corner of medical history and traditional remedy knowledge.
Definitely fascinating.
Our focus is cadmium sulphuratum, or cadmic sulfate. We're looking at it through the lens of a classic text, Boericke's Homeopathic Materia Medica.
A foundational text in that field.
Exactly. And our mission really is to unpack the incredibly specific, sometimes quite graphic details linked to this substance.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the key insights. What conditions was it supposed to treat? What were the really striking symptoms? What does it tell us about how these observations were made and recorded?
And that's precisely what a materia medica like Boericke's is for. It's essentially a detailed collection, a compendium of symptoms and therapeutic uses for substances in homeopathy.
Right.
So our deep dive today is all about exploring that historical understanding, the reported effects. It's not about endorsing its use now, obviously.
Not.
But it shines a light on a really interesting historical perspective. And the source itself kind of signals the severity right away, mentioning it's for very low forms of disease.
It really doesn't hold back, does it? Right from the start.
No.
The text opens with this pretty chilling general description associating cadmium and sulphuratum with these very low forms of disease and kind of alarmingly running deathward. That's a stark way to put it.
If it is. Very direct.
Was that typical for these texts, or is this one particularly intense?
It is remarkably blunt. Well, many materia medicas cover severe conditions. That explicit death word phrase for cadmium sulphuratum really stands out.
Okay.
The text immediately dives deeper, focusing on things like cholera, yellow fever, really severe illnesses.
Right.
It consistently highlights symptoms like extreme exhaustion, intense vomiting, profound prostration, the complete collapse.
Wow.
So it really sets it up as a remedy considered for these incredibly fast-moving, debilitating illnesses where, the patient's life force just seems to be draining away.
So definitely something thought of for the most serious situations. And it seems like the main point of attack was very specific. The source says the attack is upon the stomach more especially.
Yes.
What did that actually look like, symptom-wise?
Well, this is where the detail gets incredibly graphic. The text mentions carcinoma ventriculi, stomach cancer, and its persistent vomiting.
Okay.
It describes violent nausea and retching, that awful dry heaving. And then the descriptions of the vomit itself. Black vomit, coffee ground vomiting.
Which usually means blood, right? Digested blood.
Exactly. Or even vomiting of mucus, green slime, and fresh blood. Just awful stuff.
Yeah.
And all this comes with great prostration, extreme weakness, and great tenderness over the stomach. Plus these intense internal feelings like burning and cutting pains.
So painful they can barely move.
Pretty much. It even notes that patients must keep quiet, which really underlines how severe the discomfort and weakness must have been.
Black vomit, coffee ground.
Right.
It really paints a disturbing picture of extreme illness.
It certainly does.
But it's not just the stomach, is it? One of the most striking general symptoms that kind of runs through the whole description is this intense chilliness and coldness, even when near the fire. Just icy coldness.
That's right. This icy coldness is presented as a really core defining feature for cadmium sulphuratum. And the source really stresses how pervasive it is. It's not just feeling a bit cold. It suggests a deep systemic coldness. It reinforces the extreme nature of the conditions, like a profound internal collapse is
We're
happening.
at a deep show.
Exactly. The text even lists other remedies for comparison, things known for similar icy coldness, like camphor, Sulphuratum album, Heloderma.
Okay.
And it specifically connects this coldness to yellow fever, comparing it to other remedies like Crotalus horridus, which is rattlesnake venom, and Carbo vegetabilis, also known for conditions involving coldness and collapse.
So given that deep, icy coldness, it's clear this wasn't just a stomach bug.
Not at all.
What other, frankly, quite disturbing symptoms did Boericke link to this? It seems to reach into, almost every part of the body. It feels like we're getting a full picture of some terrible illness.
We are. And Boericke's text is really good at building that comprehensive symptom picture, showing how this state affects, pretty much everything.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Right. For the mind and head, you see things like unconsciousness, vertigo, that feeling where the room and bed seem to spin around.
Oh, awful.
And also sensations of hammering and heat in the head.
Okay, what about the face?
For the face and mouth, it mentions distortion of mouth, trembling of jaw,
Yeah.
even facial paralysis, apparently more on the left side,
Paralysis, what?
and difficult swallowing because the esophagus constricted, the food pipe feels tight or narrowed than the nose. Symptoms like ozena, which is a really foul-smelling discharge, polypus or growths, caries of nasal bones, that's decaying bone, boils on the nose, and ulcerated nostrils. It's quite a list.
Yeah, really unpleasant. Eyes.
For the eyes, things like opacity of cornea, a blue circle around the eyes, one pupil being dilated, and even night blindness.
Okay, and moving down the body, beyond the stomach.
Right. The abdomen is described as sore, tender, tympanitic, meaning bloated with gas, like a drum.
Right, heard that term.
And the liver area is also sore. The stool descriptions are, again, quite graphic. Black, offensive clots of blood, or bloody, black, and offensive. Sometimes gelatinous, yellowish green.
Just indicating severe internal distress.
Exactly. And for urine, rawness and soreness in the urethra, with urine sometimes mixed with pus and blood.
And the heart.
The heart shows palpitation with constriction of chest, feeling of tightness.
Okay, and finally the skin.
The skin can appear blue, yellow, sallow-scaly cracking. There's itching that's better from scratching, which is a specific detail. It also lists chloasma, those yellowish patches on the nose and cheeks, worsened sun and wind and chilblains.
Chilblains too.
Yes, it's this incredibly detailed and, as you said, quite distressing picture of widespread systemic problems.
It really is so comprehensive, but you almost wonder, with such a huge list of severe symptoms, does it actually make it harder to pinpoint? So many things sound generally awful.
That's a really good point.
How would practitioners tell this apart from other terrible illnesses with such broad symptoms?
That's where certain unique or very characteristic symptoms become crucial. And it brings us to one of the most, uniquely unsettling symptoms listed here.
Yeah.
The ones related to sleep.
Oh, okay.
The text says the patient stops breathing on going to sleep, then wakes up suffocating,
Terrifying.
and then, maybe most tellingly, fears to go to sleep again, along with just protracted sleeplessness.
Wow, that fear of sleep itself, that's very specific.
It is. That combination of physiological distress, stopping breathing, and the resulting psychological fear is a very strong keynote symptom for cadmium sulphuratum in this context. It helps differentiate it.
So that's like a major clue.
Exactly. It's part of what are called modalities factors that make symptoms worse or better.
Right, the triggers and reliefs.
Precisely. For cadmium sulphuratum, symptoms are described as worse from walking or carrying things after sleep, which ties into that breathing issue from being in the open air and from stimulants.
Okay.
Conversely, symptoms are said to be better with eating and with rest.
That's a powerful way to narrow it down. So understanding these specific triggers and reliefs, these modalities, really helps build a more precise picture. It lets practitioners sort of zero in on the best match.
That's the idea, yes.
But what does this all mean when you compare it to other substances? These materia medica texts often talk about relationships or comparisons, don't they?
They do, absolutely. Those comparisons are vital for kind of fine-tuning the selection.
So what does Boericke compare it to?
Well, the text explicitly compares cadmium sulphuratum with other cadmium compounds, like cadmium oxide and cadmium bromide. It notes that cadmium bromide specifically causes stomach pain, burning, and vomiting.
Okay, subtle differences.
Right, and it mentions cadmium iodatum, detailing its specific symptoms like itching around the anus and rectum, but only during the day, apparently. Also, constipation, this ineffective urge to defecate, called tenesmus, and a bloated abdomen.
So comparing within the same chemical family helps clarify the unique profile of each?
Exactly. It helps refine the understanding, aiming for that precise match. It also lists some other general comparisons like zinc, arsenicum album, carbovegetabilis, and veratrum album.
Which makes sense, given some overlap in symptoms like the coldness or the prostration we talked about.
Precisely. And just as a note, the recommended dosage mentioned in this historical text is the 3rd to 30th potency.
Which, for anyone unfamiliar, refers to the homeopathic dilution process, right? Higher numbers mean more dilution.
Correct. That was the range suggested back then.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? Thinking about the sheer level of detailed observation needed to build a profile like this.
It really is.
From the terrifying black vomit to that almost unimaginable icy coldness, and even that heartbreaking fear of sleep. This deep dive really has been about understanding a historical snapshot of medical observation. seen through this specific text, pulling out these incredible granular details.
If you connect that to the bigger picture, the sheer granularity, the detail of observation in a text like Boericke's is genuinely striking.
Yeah.
It tells us so much about the historical approach to sort of mapping out disease states and trying to match them with specific substances.
Without modern diagnostics.
Exactly. What this incredibly detailed list of symptoms really shows is this fundamental human drive to find patterns, to impose some kind of order on the chaos of illness.
Right.
Even without sophisticated tools. They were, in essence, developing an early form of, you could say, pattern recognition for illness.
Which we still do, just differently.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental cognitive process.
Yeah.
This level of detail aimed to distinguish one complex illness from another, allowing practitioners to select what seemed like the most precise remedy for a very unique set of symptoms presented by a patient.
So wrapping this up, what does this deep dive into cadmium sulphuratum really reveal about that persistent human effort to categorize, understand, and ultimately try to alleviate suffering, even using approaches and remedies that seem so, well, alien to our modern perspective? It really makes you consider the enduring power of just incredibly detailed observation, doesn't it? Regardless of the specific medical framework being used at the time. Something to think about.